Shalom. Hello, everybody. Welcome into Basketball by Association. It's the podcast that I do with my good friend Joel C. Cordes. Joel C. Cordes, how are you, brother?
Hey, I'm doing great, and I appreciate the little inside joke, since every once in a while I like to greet you with shalom when we walk into the virtual studio here together. This is going to be an interesting episode. They always are, but I have no idea what the topics are for today. You let me know that. And every once in a while, we like to play that little game of roulette, so that's fine. Also today, this is episode 73, which there's only one player in NBA history who has ever worn 73. He wore it for one season. However, we can't technically use him, or at least we shouldn't, because said player who wore number 73 was actually named for one of our episodes. I think it was 2 episodes ago with episode 71. He wore 71 in Dallas for a very short stint, and he wore 73 with the Los Angeles Lakers in 1999, Prince's favorite year, for a very short stint with them, coming off his time with 3 championships with the Bulls. That was Dennis Rodman. I just don't feel like naming another episode after Dennis Rodman, because when we get to episode 91, we almost have to do that because that was his number with the Bulls. So instead, what we've done when we don't have a good choice for numbers is we've gone to the year, either the MVP or the Rookie of the Year. And I'm going to do Rookie of the Year for the 1972-73 NBA season. This gentleman was in the league for about 13 seasons. He bounced around, especially near the end of his career, and was more of a bench guy. However, at the beginning of his career, not only did he win Rookie of the Year in 72-73, but he averaged over 30 points per game 3 times in his first 4 years. And after that, for a run of, 6 more seasons after that? Actually, 7 more seasons after that, or portions of 7. He averaged over 20 points per game. So the dude knew how to get a bucket. He also began his career for a team that no longer exists in the NBA, but they were pretty darn good during the time that he played for them. Any guesses about who this might be?
If those who are watching on the video feed, they've seen for quite some time, I was staring at the ceiling trying to figure out.
Yep. That's why I tried to draw this out as much as I could.
With all those cues. I don't know. Rookie at the end of the 72-73 season.
Yep.
So prolific in his first handful of years.
Mm-hmm.
Really good team that doesn't exist anymore.
Yep. So I'll give you a couple more clues while you rack your brain. And everybody else who's playing at home, again, if you're watching us on YouTube, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you want the audio version, which is where many of you are, most of you typically are, stat-wise, it is Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast. So his first 5 seasons were spent on the Buffalo Braves, and he averaged 28 points per game in those 5 seasons with the Buffalo Braves. He then went on to spend some time with your New York Knicks for a couple of years. Played with the Celtics for a season, the Pistons for 1.5. The New Jersey Nets at the tail end. He did a couple stints with the Lakers on very good Lakers teams, by the way. He was one of the spark plug bench guys for some championship Lakers teams, and then he wound up with the Philadelphia 76ers in 85-86. And the guy went on to play in Italy for 7 more seasons after that, not retiring from pro ball till he was 41.
Oh, interesting. I don't think I remember. Okay, so I think I know who this is. The Italy thing kind of threw me because I didn't remember him playing in Italy, but also...
Well, no one would have here stateside. At that time, no one's paying attention to the overseas game.
I was going to say, I was like, okay. Are we talking about friend of mine personally who... Not really, but definitely in my heart. Are we talking about Mr. Robert Mcadoo?
Yeah.
We're talking
Bobby McAdoo. Yeah.
Woo!
This is a guy that when you talk to, I don't want to call them old timers pejoratively, but when you talk to old timers like our good friend Ray Labov, the owner of Basketball Intelligence, which, by the way, go out and check out that site whenever you can. But Ray is an absolute basketball historian. And when you talk to guys that were alive as NBA fans in the 70s, in the 80s, Bob McAdoo is always one that they bring up as so underrated in the course of what time has remembered. And this is one of those guys where you say, man, if only the young kids could have seen him play, because the dude was a walking bucket. I mean, literally a walking bucket before some of the health thing started to catch up with him a little too early. You know, by his mid to late 20s, he was already starting to slow down a little bit. But man, those first 5 years are pretty bulletproof as a scorer.
There are a shocking amount of people, and I think it's because of the medium itself that I'm watching these people say things on. But there are a shocking number of people that consistently forget things that happened before 2004.
Oh, of
right?
course. Yep.
Like, or just never paid attention to it. Like, there was. I'm trying to think the video most recently that did this that got me to sort of get mad about it on Twitter. You know, I don't know if you know this, Joel, but people seem to get mad online, right? But
do tell, pray tell.
But there was, I think it was like a LeBron pass or something that someone said, ain't nobody been able to do this. And like someone retweeted with Magic Johnson. Oh no. So it was LeBron. It was a LeBron stat line, I think, from the finals, from one of his final seasons. And so someone had to point out, hey, Magic Johnson, you know, as a rookie, kind of destroyed the NBA finals and sort of burst onto the scene even more. Mm-hmm. And that's when I was like, people really got to stop forgetting that the NBA happened well before 2004, when people like to sort of date things. And Bob Mcadoo is one of those guys that, I mean, people forget a lot about sort of early NBA stuff, like NBA action especially.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of really great basketball players that just never get brought up unless like it happens to be like a quirky stat that are like, oh, hey, so Bob McAdoo's on this list, huh? Mm-hmm. You know,
it's unfortunate. I think it's unavoidable. It's unavoidable because the casual fan isn't going to invest enough time in the basketball history side of things. They're just not. And the networks, the websites, the social media sites, they all know that. And so they don't get too far into the weeds most of the time. So it leaves the hardcore fans, those of us who are like true NBA addicts, it kind of leaves us out to our own devices, which is why something like Basketball Reference is so much fun.
But there's video of him. Like, we're not.
Oh, right. Well,
and we're not talking about an age where like we're just inventing talkies. You know, like,
right. The cure to all of this, though, is to stop speaking in absolute hyperbole. And we've all been trained by the Stephen A. Smiths of the world now for almost 20 years to do that. And because that's what gets trending, that's what's controversial, whatever, it leads all of us to make these boneheaded statements where it's like, I don't know if I can actually back it up, but it sounds provocative, you know, like, so you say that, and inevitably there is a way to prove it wrong. Like, you will be wrong whenever you use that type of absolute hyperbole for anything in life. We're not even just talking about sports. Like, so to be able to say, yeah, LeBron blew my mind. He was absolutely amazing. He was incredible. I love watching LeBron play. My friends, do that all day. Give the king the credit that he deserves. But let's not speak in the hyperbole of no man has ever done this before in the history of the human race, you know, like, because chances are there's a Magic Johnson or a Pistol Pete Maravich or somebody like that waiting in the wings going, I'd like to have a minute with you, sir.
Yeah, I would just suggest, if you're happening to hear this and you're probably one of the folks that likes to go on a YouTube dive where you just go watch videos and stuff, just every now and then, like, look through a top list of like names for, let's just say, you know, they always like to put these top 100.
Or look at the Hall of Famer list, you know?
That's true, but then also you're going to get some people that have just go into YouTube and correlate with that with a list to your side of just say top 50 scorers ever, right? And if the first name you see that you don't recognize, put it in YouTube and see what comes up.
Yeah,
and watch some videos if it does. And if it doesn't, go to the next name or go to the next name. Like if you don't recognize quite the year or the name, just check it out. You know, you're going to find some really cool things that you're going to be really surprised it happened. You know, lots of basketball happened before LeBron James was drafted by the Cavaliers.
I love that approach. That is a guilty pleasure of mine for sure. And another fun one is there's a lot of middling NBA players who, you know, maybe had their moments in the league. They were fun, whatever. But some of those guys were just absolute monsters in college. And I've never been a huge college basketball guy. You and I talk about this quite often, especially around NBA draft time. I will be the first to admit that I don't know a lot of these players other than the top guys as they get into the draft. And once they get drafted, that's when I start paying attention. I've always been an NBA guy, but there's so many where you hear a name, you're like, oh, I really like that guy in the NBA. I know maybe he was never an all-star, but I appreciated what he did. And then you kind of do the little dive and you're like, oh my goodness, at the collegiate level, that you really get a new appreciation for those players, and you walk away going, man, the talent level in the NBA is insane when you're getting the best of the best of the best college guys who were truly dominating most of the time. And a lot of those guys wound up being role players, at the NBA level, and still maybe very good ones if they accepted that and thrived in it. But it's mind-boggling, the talent level.
I will accept this as the Bob Mcadoo episode.
All right, we're 10, 11 minutes in. I'm glad we got that out of the way.
I will accept this. All right, a lot of interesting stuff happened for the NBA this week. A big point of contention for a lot of people, and especially discussion, but some contention too. The NBA schedules were released this week. You got the full 82 game schedule next season. As we've said, we're building to it. By the way, as we're recording this, we're 58 days from the first game on the regular season schedule, which feels like it's 2 seconds away with the pace this is going. So you got your normal start of the season games, which are a handful of highlights we'll talk about in a second, that were released. The entire schedule was released, and of course your Christmas Day quintuple header, Josie Cortez. Enjoy opening up your gifts or spinning the dreidel. And afterwards, spend the entire day with your NBA friends because there are a bunch of interesting matchups. But Joel, let me ask you this one just philosophical question first, and then we'll get to some of these matchups and if you think they're first day worthy and how the NBA handles it. Do you think the NBA should be in serious discussions about possibly, I'm not breaking news with this question, just figuring out a way, whether it's sticking 82, maybe move the schedule around some. I mean, I know you're talking about 2 months worth of scheduling. Maybe the NBA season goes back a month and a half or so, and we don't do it in June. You'd have to adjust something, obviously, to do this. Mm-hmm. But instead of making it the unofficial start of the NBA season, Christmas Day, make it the actual start of the NBA season and make it like they make it an event now, but make it a season opening type event with even more pomp and circumstance.
We've talked about, I think,
I should mention right now, it starts on a Tuesday, October the 19th.
Yeah.
In the middle of the football season. So yeah, it doesn't have nearly the fanfare like leading up to it. As having like a pinnacle date like that.
Yeah, and that's very much in line with what the traditional start date has been. It's always like a week or so before
and you avoid
Halloween.
You avoid Monday Night Football, and you go to the Tuesday. You don't usually have much, if any, sort of college football action happening by then. So you try to sort of shoehorn it in, but it does feel a little shoehorned in as opposed to making it this big blowout day like Christmas Day feels like. And I will not interrupt you again. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I think we had talked about this during the COVID season about making that a permanent thing. And I think we all were in favor of that. I think everyone else was too. The major concerns that come up is, yeah, you avoid football, but then you don't avoid the Olympics very well. And you wind up condensing the season rather than stretching it out, which is what they've been trying to do to avoid those back-to-backs. And I think because the league had to endure the COVID season and no gate revenue, and then for part of last season, the same thing. But then to see the overwhelming interest that was there in the NBA, you think about the massive crowds outside of the Suns arena, outside of the Bucks arena during the finals, and just the great crowds they got during the playoffs and during the run-up to it. And the fact that there's still so much uncertainty floating around there with Delta variant and all these different things. I think they're tapping into this sense that all of us really want that normalcy and that they've experimented maybe enough. They've gotten enough data on what they want to do. And for this season or the next, it's really just, can we get through this next season at the normal level? Yes, we're already going to make the change that we're going to do the play-in tournament type of idea, but we're going to Otherwise, just not mess with the recipe here for a year or two, and let's revisit this when some of these other things settle down. Because if, starting at Christmas sounds really good, but if you have those unforeseen things, those unpredictable things that come back to bite them, or here's the other dirty little secret, Arky, you wait 2 more months, and if Delta's pretty bad here over the winter and we start having to cancel games, or we start having to do full mask mandates or full vaccine mandates again, or heaven forbid, quarantine mandates in some of these states, you might be losing some gains. So I think there's probably this year the idea of let's get started as quick as we can, as on time as we can, try to get the games in. And if we wind up having to lose some games, at least we got 2 months on or whatever. Whereas you start at Christmas time, you don't even know if by Christmas time you'll be able to have fans. And we're all hoping that's not the case, which is why everybody do the right thing. Whatever the right thing is.
Say no to drugs.
Right. Well, protect other people around you. And I won't get all preachy about go get vaccinated, go get a mask. I personally believe those are probably the best things at this point. But whatever you can do to be careful for others, it's going to come back and benefit you too. We all want normalcy, and the way to do that is to take care of your business when it comes to this stuff and be careful and not be dismissive and not be selfish and all that good stuff, because you're going to win also if you do those things. We all want a full NBA season. We want everybody to be healthy and safe. So I think that's why we're doing this.
Now, I understand there is a difference in the practicality of like doing it now versus the philosophical of
2 years from now. Yeah, no, I hope we go to Christmas.
Should the NBA have already been there, kind of thing? Like, sure, I understand. Like, there's a difference in those discussions philosophically. I do think it would be tremendous for the NBA to be able to do that. I also think, just like I think with baseball, they should condense the schedule, but they're not condense the schedule. I'm sorry. I guess it's reduced the schedule, reduce the number of games that they would have to play. But obviously, financially, you're going to take more. You're not going to give back more if you're the governors of the NBA, and I get that. So in my case, then you'd have to adjust some of the sort of tentpole traditions that you have with the NBA, which is you wouldn't start in the middle of October, right? Going forward, you start on Christmas Day.
Yeah, and I don't think the starting in October is sacred to any of us. Like, no NBA fan goes, "Oh, I can't wait for that." Like, we want the season to start, but we just want it to start. It's not that it is in October. It's not like the NFL, has been doing their September 11th starts now, and Christmas Day is pretty sacred to NBA fans, and college football's got New Year's and NFL's got Thanksgiving and all that stuff.
Yeah, and even though college football has before and the NFL has before played on Christmas, like it's an NBA thing. And when you talk about the major sports, it's an NBA pretty centric league. So if you started there, then we'd have to talk about moving the finals past June, more into what we were thinking, what we saw this year, July, but more likely into late July, early to mid-August to still be able to get those in. And then do you step on the toes of baseball? Do you care to step on the toes of baseball? Even though you'd be wrapping up before baseball gets to its playoff stretch, where people want to sort of, get the most interest right at the end of the year, but you're also fighting a sport that sort of thinks the summer belongs to it. So it's an interesting discussion to get into. If the NBA ever really wanted to seriously do it, I would support it, by the way, because I like having a day that sort of like kicks it off. Like,
yeah,
college football has basically turned into Labor Day, right? Labor Day, that is when it sort of kicked off right around there. NFL a week right after that, right? In sort of the September 5th, 8th, 10th, 11th kind of range. We know that. NBA just has this sort of baseball, by the way, has the beginning of April. April 1 is sort of kind of turned into that. So the NBA just sort of has this nebulous, like, middle of October Tuesday, as we can sort of squeeze it in, because we got to get 2 months of games in before while other stuff's going on, and just might as well jam this in. So
so the one thought with the summer, I don't think they would necessarily worry about stepping on the toes of baseball. But the unsaid thing is that's been the WNBA season time, and the league has been so invested in trying to get that not only off the ground, which it very much is, but trying to get that to be a little more of a national conscience thing, which it does grow every single year, and I'm really happy to see that because it is good ball.
They're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, it's good ball, and I think they've kind of left the summer to that, to go, hey, if you're really jonesing for some basketball during the summer, there's this other league and it's really good, go see that. So that would be the only thing, because now if you start sliding the WNBA season into half of the summer and half of the autumn, that starts to really conflict with a lot of those players playing overseas. And a lot of them have to play overseas, unfortunately, in order to make enough money to live, because they don't earn a full, living wage basically just off of their WNBA season. So most of them play in multiple leagues year round. And so, yeah, there's just all these little factors that you don't take into account until you really sit down and like, oh yeah, the domino effect, the butterfly effect really begins here by everybody else that orbits the NBA and that orbits all the other sports too,
I would counter that the WNBA should pay their women more, right?
Right.
But also, I understand that the more you move the WNBA season into fall, you think the NBA loses people to football and sort of that consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
The WNBA audience is gone at that point. Like if you
summer, yeah, and any of the casuals that may have come along for it, yeah, I think the hardcore ones are there either way. But
so the NBA may be more invested. See, what I think will be interesting to find out is if this decision ever gets made or does not get made, just as importantly, how much of the allowing the product, the WNBA, which David Stern was very instrumental in getting off the ground and wanting it to succeed as much as possible, how much not wanting to have their coverage minimized by their product.
Right. You don't want to cannibalize your own product between the two.
Right. Because again, NBA makes money. The NBA makes money from both of it. WNBA makes money from TV because people like ESPN need the content and the programming, and so they pay for that content and programming. So maybe it's in their best financial interest too to keep the two separated and to just continue to do the mid-October starts like they've done. Joe, let me get to the how the first night looks as far as the primetime matchups. You tell me. We start the season, night one. We got to blow this thing out of the water, buddy. We got to get the fireworks up. We got to say the NBA is here and it's a new season. 58 days from now, they tip off with Brooklyn at Milwaukee. I think that's a pretty good pick.
I love it. It's disrespectful to the Phoenix Suns that they were in the NBA Finals and are not on the opening night slate. It just is, but it is hard to argue with the NBA champs versus the team that last year everybody pegged to be NBA champs.
And they got Vegas has the highest win total of any team, still Brooklyn this year.
Yes, so they're right back in that seat again because they've done some reloading. Presumably they'll be healthy. The star power is undeniable. How good was Kevin Durant during the Olympics? The answer is incredibly good. He was just as good, if not better, during Brooklyn's run. It's just that, a lot of the horses fell down next to him and there just weren't enough standing in that game 7 against the Bucks, and credit Milwaukee for taking advantage of it. So, I have no problem with it. I'm excited for it. It's kind of the logical matchup, especially if you're going to go East-East, West-West as your matchups to start things off and not cross-conference it, which sometimes they've done.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you got to get the champs in there one way or the other, and you might as well have them play Brooklyn. There's no other no-brainer teams in the Eastern Conference. Yes, Philly would be fun. There's a lot of respect there. Miami is always in the mix for these type of games because of the market size. There is a fair amount of franchise prestige. They're another team that's reloaded with a lot of interesting pieces that people will want to see. It used to be that the Knicks or the Bulls were really in on these games just because, again, market size, and they were good. They're both teams on the rise. They don't warrant this type of attention quite yet. So, yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
Oh, by the way, go ahead, raise the banner, give the rings. It's a
Yeah.
great night for everyone there. Who really cares about the result? We're really looking for all that star power, and there's a ton of star. There's not a lot of games this year where you'll get more stars in sort of one starting lineup for both. You're talking what these four out of the 10 guys will be like just our superstars. Our
Yeah, this
superstars of
this
the
is
league.
like Red Sox Yankees back when both teams were at their pinnacle at the same time. You can't argue even if you don't like the two teams, you can't argue with the talent being assembled in those games.
The back end of that doubleheader for opening night, big fat open Tuesday. We got to work on the name for it. We'll figure that out. The Lakers, a lot of star power there, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And a team that a lot of people are expecting a lot of things in a rebound way from, the Golden State Warriors, head their way to Staples Center. And, we want to talk about some star power. That thing's going to be pretty darn loaded, too, with star power as well.
And that's why they went this route. It is a little eyebrow raising at first, considering the Warriors, didn't make the playoffs last year, and they've been dinged up and hurt now for a while. It feels like a different era ago that they were the top dogs and were absolutely ruling the NBA.
Oh man, it feels
even
like
though it hasn't been that long, right?
The injuries, the pandemic, it all just feels like It was like forever ago.
It's the pre-COVID era is right. What it is. And maybe they just need to win an NBA championship again, and then COVID will just magically disappear. I think maybe that's the correlation we're looking for, is that when they were winning, there was no COVID.
You know what? That's true. I want to thank you,
Dan Brown. You need to write a book about this. Get out the conspiracy hat.
The Knicks have won more recently, but that may be the reason there was okay. I don't want to. Yeah, I'm willing.
We're gonna turn some stones here. We don't want to unturn.
Would I sacrifice the Knicks to get rid of the pandemic? Man, okay. I don't want to talk about it, but a lot of people may not like me for what I might say to that.
Anyway, let's.
It's a great West Coast game, so I think that's a perfect thing to end on your first night back.
It absolutely is. The one little asterisk that'll be there is we still won't have Klay Thompson. Presumably, they're targeting a Christmas Day comeback for Klay, and that. It just feels so sad. The Warriors aren't the Warriors without Klay, but at the same time, you're going to get Steph, you're going to get Draymond, you're going to get Andrew Wiggins, you're going to get Wiseman. It's Andre Iguodala is back there. They're a loaded team. So it makes sense. I think the NBA is still trying to reboot the Warriors a little bit because they knew what a huge draw of interest that team and what Steph was too. And it's in their best interest, the league's best interest, for the Warriors to be popular again. So they're going to try to remind us of that. At the same time, and again, we all know why the Lakers are there. It's the biggest market. It's the guy whose league it still pretty much is in LeBron James. There's tons of star power with that team, and Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook there now and what have you. So, yeah, you're never going to get away from that, even though the Lakers, by the way, they didn't do very well last year. Like, they're still going to be there. That's like when the Knicks or the Bulls used to get on TV for these huge games and were maybe kind of on their decline. But it's eyebrow-raising to me that the Suns don't get in. I know they're not the same market. I know maybe some people feel like they were a one-hit wonder getting into the finals, but they still made the finals, and they still had a really fun season.
Yeah, and
really fun series kicking the Lakers' butts, right? That would be a matchup to revisit.
Let's pin that for just a second, because they'll be talked about on this next day, the opening, the big honky Wednesday for the NBA. That also may need rewritten. We'll look at that one. First of all, talk about star power. My New York Knicks will be hosting the Boston Celtics, and you want to talk about the star power of Evan Fournier and Derrick Rose, a 45-year-old looking Derrick Rose.
Kevin Knox is going to be there, y'all. Well, he might be there, maybe, if he's still on the roster.
I think Kemba Walker will be healthy enough to play. I mean, he doesn't do back-to-backs, so hopefully.
No, Thibodeau said he'll be playing. Sounds like Kemba's doing the back-to-backs, but we'll see.
Well, listen. It's
We'll see
all
if
fine
he's
to say that in August.
We'll see if he's broken down already by game 1 of the season.
Yeah, well, let's just find out what practices are like for Kemba Walker before we get there with him. So Boston and New York, a pretty sporty rivalry for your Eastern your Eastern half of the doubleheader for that Wednesday. I really like that game, especially since both teams are going to be not bad. We don't know how good, but they won't be bad.
I've got nothing further to add to it. Yeah, they both should be playoff contenders. I mean, I'm just geeked that the Timberwolves, one of the worst teams in the West, get the Houston Rockets, the worst team in the West, on opening night. So there's that chance. Remember, Minnesota went 2-0 last year to start the season. There's that chance that we can run that early table again, and you take what you can get. It is always funny, like on those opening matchups, the opening big day, the Wednesday, when you got 10 games, 12 games, whatever it is. There's clearly the matchups where the league goes, yep, we got to get them on the first day. And then there's the other ones where like, all right, now who do we have left over? And which ones of these are going to be an absolute wash? Let's just stick two of the smallest markets like Cleveland and Memphis together.
Orlando, plays who do they play? They play
no, they're San Antonio. I mean, that's actually that's medium-sized TV market. San Antonio is actually a decent market.
But like ever watches the Spurs. Don't start this.
Philly. Well, don't you tell people that down in San Antonio, you'll get run out on a rail, my friend.
It's fine. They can run me wherever they want to run me.
But Philly and New Orleans, that's a fun matchup on the first day. Denver and Phoenix, I'm all about that. Boston, New York, that makes a lot of sense.
I was just going to mention Denver and Phoenix sort of as the sort of end cap of this.
All right, well, I've stolen your thunder.
Well, I was just going to say.
By the way, Oklahoma City's playing Utah. Those are two small markets that the league does not care about.
Yeah, well, then maybe don't leave Seattle. I don't know. So
fair enough. Zing and fair enough.
Phoenix, again, you're talking about like the disrespect they've gotten, as far as not being on like that first night matchup. And I think we'll talk about the Christmas Day games in just a second because that's next. And I just think that they're spectacular. It's also a team that didn't lose pieces. Like they didn't rebuild, like they shut it down and rebuild. Like they re-signed Chris Paul. Like they have the star power that they're going to have, and they were in the NBA Finals, as you clearly mentioned. And they were very sporty opponents in that NBA Finals. So to be able to sort of like have them lost. Is that game even on national TV? It is on national TV. Okay,
it is. Thankfully, thank you. It'll be late, and none of the East Coasters will watch it, but it'll be a good game.
Yeah, like we can watch it. That's fine. We can watch an MVP go against Chris Paul. I'm cool with that. Maybe not directly 1-on-1, but
Can I just? I have one little beef with this. Like, if you're going to make Wednesday your big day, and they do it with quantity over quality because they give you like the 3 marquee matchups. Only 2 of them will be on national TV. There'll be another one that's really good, like Philly and New Orleans, and then a couple others to kind of whet your appetite where go, yeah, I might check out the Bulls and the number 1 pick, Cade Cunningham on the Pistons. Maybe I'll check that out. Like, they'll give you a couple of those. But there are 4 really, really good teams that don't have to play Tuesday, don't have to play Wednesday. The league is saving them for Thursday, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
We don't get to see Dallas and Atlanta, or we don't get to see the Clippers or the Heat. The Heat are playing the Bucks, and the Clippers will play the Warriors. Like, we don't get to see those teams until we're a couple of days in, and it's like, why not just do, instead of that double header on the Tuesday, why not do the quadruple header, and let's get the Clippers and the Heat and the Suns, and then either the Mavericks and or the Hawks in on that, or the Sixers could certainly get in on that type of thing. The Nuggets are good enough to be in that conversation. Like, give us a couple more choices here, and let's do 4 games, and then you can get those teams back on the Thursday.
I'm raising my hand here because I want to pose something to you. Okay, one, I think it's pretty funny that we get to watch Trae Young take on Luka Doncic in the matchup of.
I'm sure it's coincidence.
hey, this just happened to happen. I guess they just showed up in the schedule lottery, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we just put these together. They have no relation to each other, right? Nothing's happened between these two franchises that would mean anything.
The envelope was just a little bit cold when we were opening it to make the schedule matchup.
Let me pose this idea to you. you go all out on NBA Tuesday night, right? Like you do the 2 big games, 3 big games. You just pick a number that you like. You do like you do like a 2 Eastern-ish. We do an Eastern. Let's do a Central and let's do a Pacific time, right? Like just
Yeah.
figure something kind of cool out like that, right? They don't. Not every game has to have its own official window where you have to watch every single second before the next game starts. But let me ask you this. If you do that and you have the whole nightcap where it's like it's the big blow up celebration with the defending champs and all, the first full day with everybody else, everybody plays, right? And you go all day.
I would love it.
You go from
I'd love it. I
noon
want all
noon
30
Eastern
teams
on.
playing.
Yeah.
I want all 30 teams playing and give them the next day off then.
Yeah.
Give
fine.
everybody the next day off and
You
they
got
get
a
a
bunch of
practice
off
and they
days.
get a rest day. Yeah.
Yeah, you got a bunch of off and rest days scheduled in the thing. Just make that one of them, right?
Mhm.
So just everybody.
Or just start the beginning of your NBA season with a back-to-back-to-back for everybody so that the rest of the year seems so much easier by comparison. No one will complain about the schedule for the rest of the year because they got the hard stuff out of the way and the rest feels like sunshine and lollipops.
I don't know if you're mocking me or if you're endorsing my idea.
I'm mocking the... I'm mocking both the schedule complainers and the hardcore ones who are like, they should play every day. You know, like,
I mean, think about it. You have a Wednesday.
Everybody.
You have a Wednesday in the middle of October after the NBA starts. That at noon Eastern, you just got games all day. NBA TV, ESPN, TNT. You can put these games.
The shopping channel. Just put it wherever you got to put it.
If you happen to own that, ABC, right? Like if you can interrupt Maury or Dr. Phil or whatever's on there during the day, like just turn it into like college basketball for a couple years had like this 24 hours of college basketball.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay 24 hours of it. Just, stagger the time, stagger the games. I mean, you're playing this quintuple game we're about to talk about. Like you could stagger it like that. And
here's this is the stupidest idea ever, but I'm going to say it anyway.
All right.
Let's just get so ridiculous. Let's have all 30 teams play at the same time, and the NBA just rents out 30 different channels, and it's on. And then you got a league pass or DVR to get everything. But can you imagine, like, the highlights? I just want Ernie Johnson, like, in the HQ trying to track all of the games and the highlights coming in. It'll never happen, but since we're going down that rabbit hole.
Now, if you're interested, the Thunder Mavericks are heading into overtime. That is over on AMC. That's that's right before the Walking Dead marathon starts. So go over there real quick.
Yep.
Get yourself reacquainted. Okay, so the Christmas Day lineup I want to mention because it starts with my Knicks, the most popular team in the offseason. Taking on these Atlanta Hawks teams. By the way, that's kind of a perfect like opening game, right? Like to have Trae Young go back to Madison Square Garden to kick off your NBA coverage.
The NBA loves to put the Knicks on the Christmas Day games. That's been as long as they can get them on.
And now they're worth it. Now they're a little bit worth the watch. So that's not going to suck a little bit. But also you get the sort of the antagonists versus the New York crowd and the New York Knicks who are retooled a little bit too to try to I mean, the Knicks, they put the Knicks at noon generally because there was a bad team, right? But now you put them on because they're an attraction and they can kick off your coverage. I think that's a really good starting game.
I'm fine with it. I think it makes sense to have the Knicks be in the open, and the Knicks or the Celtics in the opening slot either way, just because those are among your marquee Eastern Conference franchises where the league tries to get them on for the nostalgia one way or the other, and hopefully they're good enough. Even when they're middling, they're on.
The Knicks were in the playoffs and won a game last year.
Like now it's worth it. But I'm saying in previous years, the Knicks would be on even when you weren't even sure if they were going to be a playoff team. It is surprising to me that out of this group, and I know you can't get everybody in, that out of this group you pick Boston and not Philly. To me, and I know we're.
Okay, that's going to go right next to it. So Boston at Milwaukee. I think it's a good game, but I do think you're right. I think Philly is an even more attractive matchup to go against Milwaukee.
Yes.
If you're going to stay with the East Coast, Philadelphia, I like better than Boston in that particular matchup, or like in that sort of slotting of games. So I'm with you.
They've been the better team the last couple of seasons. They've got arguably more star power. It's a more fun matchup against the Bucks. Yes, we got no problem with the champs being on a Christmas Day game. That's a given. I like that they're matched up against another Eastern Conference team. The only other one I would have gone, I would maybe like to say that would have been Bucks Lakers. Would have been really, really fun. But yeah, I understand why the league puts the Celtics in this game, and they're just good enough to potentially warrant it. But the 76ers are not chopped liver here, friends. And once again, the Miami Heat, a team that also typically has gotten in on these games, is not in the slate this year.
It's true.
They bowed out super early in the playoffs, but given the off-season moves, I just feel like they're a more compelling team, even against the Bucks, than Boston would be. So that's two teams that I think should be in over the Celtics.
But I'll be honest with you. I think since Miami's not a traditional, like, this is not a team we try to feature here. I think that
but they have for a long time, dating back to the Alonzo Mourning, Tim Hardaway era. So we're talking almost 30 years now. Like, they have really tried to feature the Heat whenever possible.
I think if you're going to sort of, because clearly they try to put a couple of new teams in, take a couple of sort of teams out, and try to, see what works, who was popular last year, who was good last year, blah blah blah. I think if Phoenix is going to be in this year, which is the next game against Golden State, I think Miami's probably makes the most sense to sort of bow out, so to speak, for 1 year and just give the Western Conference champs their due in a game that's on, it's not the prime of prime games there, but it's, after you're probably a little tired playing with all your new gadgets and before you go to sleep, you can go Phoenix and Golden State try to keep you up.
Fair enough. I mean,
because the big headliner that's next is Brooklyn and the Lakers.
Yeah,
and
so
that is...
let me say this about Phoenix and Golden State. And you're right, that may be one that a lot of people bypass, but that also may be the most fun game of the entire slate. Like fun with a capital F and like 3 to 10 N's behind it. Like you might score 250, 260 points between those two teams easily. And you got the star power at the guards position. You got some young bigs who play above the rim. Like, you got some dirty work guys on both teams. They both play with good pace. They're in the same division again. Like, there's a lot to chew on with that game. And you're right, that may be the one that gets bypassed at 5:00 Eastern. But
yeah, and I like the slate. I'll be honest, I think it's a great, entertaining potential slate for the entire day. It's just that one just happens to be the time slot where I think more people might find themselves a little pre-dinner snooze.
Yep.
Similar-ish to Thanksgiving, but you've been up all day, like with Thanksgiving. Like, right. At some point, you're going to lose a little bit of energy. Just in time to get you to Brooklyn and the Lakers, and we're talking about star power out the wazoo. Like, there is no other game that can get you this many superstar names this year than Brooklyn versus the Lakers, which is why the NBA probably hopes, for his eyeballs' sakes, that this is the preview of the NBA Finals this year.
No doubt. And praying that everybody's healthy still at this point of the season, because we're
2 months in.
Yeah, we're 2 months in. Praying that the pandemic has died down so that you got a full arena in Los Angeles and that you get the stars out to play a little bit. So they, ABC and ESPN gets all their celebrity shots, which they just absolutely love, of who's in the crowd. And you want that full traditional NBA primetime experience, and this is why it's traditionally been the Lakers or it's been the Knicks in those slots, because you get a full arena, it'll be an amped arena, it'll be a good matchup, and you're going to get lots of famous people there in the stands who it's a credibility play by the NBA to go, yeah, look, all these really famous people like us too, what about you? And that's when the casual fan is going to come in and just, you talk about the pomp and circumstance side of things. This is about as good as it gets for the NBA, regardless of how you feel about the two teams. And you hope for a good game, and you hope that Brooklyn's got all three of their all-stars there, that the Lakers got all their big guns healthy, and that you really, truly get to see the best roster for each team out there. These are, very potentially the two best teams from each conference. I'm not as sold on the Lakers, but they're going to be up there and in that conversation, barring some type of a injury debacle again, and the league hates that because then you get into these games and it's such an anticlimactic type of thing. We're like, and it's the Brooklyn Nets led by Kyrie Irving and Joe Harris.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Now we're going to spend the next 30 minutes talking about the injuries and giving you puff pieces on Kevin Durant, even though he's not playing, you know?
Even in this particular prime slot, I think it's the 4th straight year the Lakers have been in it. The prime slot. Now, I think the year before that, they were in the late night cap, but not the prime cap. And of course, the Lakers just in general bring eyeballs, LeBron or not LeBron, because LeBron wasn't on the team 4 years ago. So, but
you had Nick Swaggy P bringing in the eyeballs.
And he did for the late game, not for the prime game. And the late game is Dallas at Utah in another potential tremendous matchup to end your evening. Joel, you're shaking your head. You're clearly in love with this idea?
No, I get Luka being there. The league is going to continue to pimp Luka and Trey as much as they can. Those are the two next guys. I get that. So even though Dallas is not as good of a team as Utah, probably this year, and they certainly weren't last year, you know why the Mavericks are in there. But I don't understand the Utah Jazz in this slot. Yes, they had the number 1 seed last year, but yes, once again, they did not make the conference finals. They did not make the NBA finals. You can't tell me that having Zion Williamson in that slot against Luka Doncic isn't a tastier matchup that's going to get people to stay up late. I don't understand how two teams that have done more in the playoffs recently, that being the Los Angeles Clippers or the Denver Nuggets, and let's not forget that in the Nuggets versus Mavericks, you would get Jokic versus Doncic. So you get that little fun. Let's not forget the way that the Mavericks and the Clippers have smacked into each other the last 2 years in the playoffs and given us some really nice series. And you don't want to revisit that? Like, I understand you can't get the Clippers playing at home because you just had the Lakers before that, and the branding reasons won't allow them to do it. But why not put this game in Dallas and put the Clippers on the road, or even the Nuggets, or even the Pelicans on the road? Because, again, I'm sorry, Utah Jazz fans. I love what your team does. I am rooting for them to make it to an NBA Finals again. I want them to prove everybody wrong, but that is not a Christmas Day draw unless they had been in the conference finals last year or the NBA Finals. And even then, it would be a little bit of a stretch.
I think this individually could be a good game.
Yes.
But I'm 100% with you. If you are in the last game of the night, you are talking about not just the casuals coming in for the most part, right? Especially if you had a full freaking day of basketball. You probably have some people who are a little burnt out. Mm-hmm. So what's going to bring any of those casuals back in, or keep the current hardcore day-to-day NBA fans like you and I paying attention that deep into the night again, and possibly ignoring our family for at least a little bit? I think you go star versus star. And that's why I think you go a Luka versus, and no offense to Mr. Jokic, the reigning MVP, but I think your Zion Williamson New Orleans Pelicans idea is a perfect idea. The NBA wants that guy to be in the forefront of the NBA consciousness.
He's got to be there up on the Mount Rushmore with Doncic and with Trey. And whoever's the fourth guy, whether it's Giannis or Jokic or whatever, but the next generation of stars, I mean, it could be Devin Booker, the next generation of stars, 3 of those spots are already taken. And it has to be, you're right, for the league. It's got to be Trey, Luka, and Zion. 4-letter names up on the four-headed thing. The fourth guy that they get in there maybe is a rotating slot, but it's almost immaterial. It's almost immaterial who it is.
Yeah, I just think that for that night, as much as you want to like on Utah, and much as they have, they're a fine team. They're a very fine basketball team. Mm-hmm. I was a big fan of Con, still am. Like, I can like guys, but not think a team's particularly sexy to watch. I'll watch Utah probably 15 games this year, 20 games, probably
Mhm.
the majority of. I mean, I won't go out of my way to probably catch them, but I'll keep.
Yeah, but they'll be in good matchups that
Yeah,
are worth watching.
yeah, I'll keep up with them, right? Like I'm not gonna seek them out against Houston this year or anything, but like I'll find them somewhere.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
But I think you go star versus star when you're trying to match that up, and I think that would have been a perfect sort of a marriage of games to end your Christmas Day and to put the finishing touch. Plus, those two dudes will match up at some point against each other, right? Like those two, whether it's Luka going straight to the bucket and it's Zion trying to stop him, like both these guys, Zion handles the ball more than people think he handles the ball.
Right, and Luka
Right?
will get accidentally switched onto him,
Yeah,
in some way that the Mavericks were trying to avoid. But
yeah, you'll get the two guys like in the game, and then at some point, a handful of times that game, they'll be a one-on-one, and then you'll be like, "Oh, hey, this is kind of fun." Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Joel. Two more quick things I want to get to before we get out of here. One, thank you for agreeing to let me continue to do that.
I mean, I didn't hit the mute button and I didn't hit the end button.
Thank you. Thank you, Joel C. Cordes. I would like to mention that since we last recorded, Patrick Beverley was traded again. He is going to your Minnesota Timberwolves, by the way, and that means the Timberwolves, not to be too late on the news, they are giving up on Jarrett Culver right now. And I texted you about this right after the news broke. That your Timberwolves are getting Patrick Beverley, and we said on the podcast Patrick Beverley's not staying in Memphis. Like he's moving. And
although I thought if any of those three between him and Rondo and Okongwu were gonna stay anywhere, or no, it wasn't Okongwu, it was now I have to go to NBC Sport. Yeah, there we go. Daniel Oturu. Thank you. If I thought that Beverley had the highest probability of staying if one of those three guys did, but I'm happy.
But we were on it. We said it probably wasn't going to stay. He was an asset, and so he, as an asset, goes to your Minnesota Timberwolves. Jarrett Culver is moving, as I just not only alluded to but mentioned outright. And Joel, you didn't seem to love or hate this when you came back to me with text, because you were okay with Patrick Beverley, but kind of disappointed that Jarrett Culver's experiment's done.
Yeah, the Wolves need veteran defensive help in that backcourt where you have D'Angelo Russell, who tried a little harder than normal last year on the defensive end, but is still patently terrible at defense, no matter how hard he tries. I think he's going to be one of those guys that just always is. Malik Beasley is very aggressive. Dude plays his heart out, but is not technically a good defender. I think Anthony Edwards, who had a lot to learn last year as a rookie, but you saw how quickly he began to learn things, especially on the offensive end. I think he's going to be a guy who's maybe not a plus defender, but kind of like Chris Middleton, where he will hold his own and he'll score so many points that he'll still come out in those matchups. But those are your three guys who are getting the lion's share of the minutes at the 1 through 3 spots, because Anthony Edwards, I think, will play the small forward for them next year. You don't really have a defensive stopper out of the group besides Josh Okogie, who is a plus defender but not a stopper. And Okogie's offensive problems have been well documented, which is disappointing for a guy who is labeled as a shooter out of college. So Patrick Beverley is an irrational confidence guy. I love that you are adding an irrational confidence defensive guy to three other guards, Russell, Beasley, and Edwards, who are so irrational confidence on offense. Like, they want to embarrass you. Anthony Edwards wants to yam on your head. Beasley's going to beat you to every 50-50 ball. And D'Angelo Russell, just the ridiculous, Steph Curry style pull-ups and the disregard for human life that he has in taking some of the shots he does. Not always good shots, but he's a guy that wants the ball at the end of the game, all that stuff. So I love that you've got three guys that have very big chips on their shoulders when it comes to the offensive side, and you're going to add at least somebody who's a very competent defender. Buddy's 32 going on 33. He doesn't need the ball. He's not going to steal touches. Pat Beverley makes a ton of sense. It's great that the Timberwolves got out of the Juancho Hernan-Gomez contract, which is not egregious, but they signed the guy after like 8 good games once they had traded for him 2 seasons ago. And last year he was an absolute flop. Plus, they've got 2 youngsters in Jaden McDaniels, Jared Vanderbilt, who are doing really nice things. Those guys are the future at the 4 position. The thing I don't like, as you alluded to, is that after 2 seasons, you are giving up on a number 5 pick to get Patrick Beverley, again, useful player, but Jarrett Culver, he was hurt both of his seasons. He was in way over his head his first season. His second year, last season, didn't really show you the growth that you needed. But when you look at the body type that Jarrett Culver has, and you look at the athleticism and the fact that, yes, he hasn't shot the ball well, you go, yeah, he may not have played a ton this year, but Josh Okogie is going to play a lot less this year too. And Okogie has been the more playable guy, but somebody that you think has kind of already hit his ceiling and still can't shoot either. I would have rather kept the developmental guy, and I can't for the life of me think that the Grizzlies talked such a stiff price that it had to be Jarrett Culver. Josh Okogie was taken number 20 in the first round in 2018. Culver was the 5th pick. So once again, you've got another Timberwolves draft pick, a high lottery pick who should have been a building block, who you are giving up on after just a couple of seasons. And that's damning to both your draft, it's damning to your player development. It's not a good look, and I would have rather spent the time with Culver for one more season just to find out. It's going to be tough for Culver in Memphis because they are so loaded with young forwards. But at the same time, a lot of those really talented forwards were guys who kind of came out of nowhere, and the Grizzlies developed them over the last couple seasons. So I would have to imagine they're looking at Culver going, we might be able to get something out of this guy, and maybe it'll be good for Jarrett, but there's a big, long log jam in front of him at the small forward or the power forward spots.
All right, Joel, one final story for this here podcast. The Boston Celtics are going to retire the jersey of Kevin Garnett. Joel, do you know how many jerseys this will now make for the Boston Celtics to have retired once they do so on March the 13th?
I don't know, but I know that Garnett played 5 seasons in Boston. He won a title. He went to another finals. He wore number 5. And somehow Kevin Garnett's number 21 jersey is not hanging in the rafters in Minnesota. But yet it's going to go up in Boston instead, which, again, I got no problem with. But it's just, again, not to tie this back to the Timberwolves, but it just goes back to dysfunction and disrespect. Like, there is no excuse for that.
To be fair to your Timberwolves, they're a little more selective with who they retire the jersey of, because this will make the 24th jersey. No one retires jerseys like the Boston Celtics. This will be number 24, Joel.
Yeah.
And listen, 5 years it was a hell of a run for them in those 5 years. But
and Leon Poe and Tony Allen are going, so you're saying there's a chance.
Holy smokes. 24 is just a lot of jerseys to have up in the rafters. That's why people have bizarre numbers in.
Stephon Marbury is like, hey, dude, I played a season there and I won some MVPs and some titles in China. What do you say?
So, A, should it be retired in Boston, considering Boston's not very selective? And B, kind of a jumping off point to sort of what you were alluding to is like, if this guy's jersey deserves to be retired anywhere, like, it's Minnesota, man.
The first thing that needs to happen in Minnesota once Glenn Taylor is out of the picture, because that's what this is. It's the personal beef between owner Glenn Taylor, longtime owner, and Kevin Garnett, which has had many different chapters. In fact, we spent 20 minutes on this show probably 6 months ago talking about this. But it's that beef that's holding it up. But the minute he's out of the picture and the 2 new owners, which includes Alex Rodriguez, are fully entrenched, which is supposed to be like 2-3 years from now, I'm talking the minute that Glenn Taylor walks out the door, Kevin Garnett better be passing him in the hallway, give him a big middle finger, and walk into that office with the new owners, and let's get it done. Let's pick the date. Kevin, what date you want to be here? Let's get that jersey up, because there is no way. There are few players in NBA history who have done more for a franchise with less than Kevin Garnett did during his time there. That being said, yes, I think that Garnett's jersey does deserve to be there. They've typically retired jerseys of champions who played some sort of meaningful role or had a huge longevity with the team. Garnett doesn't have the longevity, but you talk about the meaningful role. They don't win that championship in 2007. They don't go to the finals 2 years later without Kevin Garnett being involved in that. And really, you can give credit to Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen, who I don't think they'll retire his jersey because there's some animosity there now. You give credit to Allen, you give credit to Garnett. Those are the two guys that signaled the truly modern recent era for the Boston Celtics of being a good team, a contending team, a respected team again. Because what had preceded that was not very good teams, some god-awful teams, and then a couple of years of quasi-respectability with Paul Pierce and Antoine Walker, where everybody was kind of hoping they were going to be decent, and it never really panned out. So Garnett gets a lot of credit not only for the ring, but I think the culture change that was ushered in when he arrived, and suddenly they became like this hard-nosed, pretty respected team again overnight, and they've kept that going to this day despite some ups and downs.
Joel, real quick, I'm gonna list for you who has their jersey and number retired for the Boston Celtics. This may take two more hours.
Right.
Okay.
Coming up next week, part 2. We'll just do an hour of this.
Walter Brown, the original, the founder and the first owner of the Boston Celtics. You kind of get that. He gets number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Then Red Auerbach gets the number 2. Number 3 is retired for Dennis Johnson, who played through 1990 and then had his jersey retired like the next year, like 6 months later. It was wild. Bill Russell's number 6, JoJo White's number 10, Bob Cousy number 14, Tommy Heinsohn's number 15, Tom Satch Sanders number 16, John Havlicek number 17, Dave Cohen's number 18, Don Nelson number 19, Bill Sharman number 21, Ed McCauley number 22, Frank Ramsey number 23, Sam Jones number 24. Wonder why it's hard to get a jersey number that's not bizarre in Boston. So Casey Jones number 25, Cedric Maxwell number 31. He's on the radio team, I think. Still Kevin McHale number 32, Larry Bird number 33, Paul Pierce is 34, Reggie Lewis 35, Robert Parrish number 00. How do you?
Eric Montross 0 isn't on there.
I was gonna say, like, how do you get a jersey number like you have to be Evan Fournier? You have to be like
94.
Yeah, you had to just get these weird numbers.
Mr. 94 feet, Evan Fournier.
Yeah, that's right. All right, that's fun. Yeah. Who does Minnesota have retired, by the way, before we leave?
Malik Sealy, who was killed in a car accident while he was playing for them. And that one makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I believe he's the only one up there other than a couple of the Minneapolis Lakers that have jerseys up there just because it's still Minneapolis. And the city retained the rights to the history of that team even after they moved.
Apparently also...
Or shared the rights.
They have not just the number, but Flip Saunders' name Flip is retired there. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. And that was, again, another... tragic
posthumous
tragic raising to the rafters. But again, like, there's nobody else in franchise history. There's a couple of people that you could stretch out that, like, they had really good careers overall, or they were really important there in Minnesota for a time, but nobody even comes close. And Karl Anthony Towns, if he continues to play there for a long time, I think he'll warrant it. I think his number will be up there. As long as he's not, again, another one of these guys that leaves a little early like Kevin Love did, because Love could have had his jersey retired in Minnesota too. But it makes sense for why he left. It makes sense why he left.
Sometimes I forget Kevin Love was in Minnesota.
Oh, man. And you talk about stat stuffer. There's that 3-season span where Kevin Love not only is a starter at the all-star level, but is like a quasi-MVP candidate, even though his team's not very good, but just the ridiculous number of rebounds and points that guy was putting up and shooting threes. Like,
look at this: 2010, 20 and 15, 2011, 26 and 13, 2012, 18 and 14, 2013, 26 and 13.
Yeah.
Whew. sort of forget. Like that's been what, about a decade ago that he was there.
It is. But yeah, I mean, back to where we're at, and we'll end on this. Kevin Garnett's jersey's got to be up there before anybody else goes, and it's got to be done the minute Glenn Taylor walks out the door. I have spoken. Let it be written. Let it be done. This is episode 73. It's the Bob Mcadoo episode. And again, find us on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe. Hit the little dingy button. Whatever you got to do. And you can find us the audio version, Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next week, Monday. The show will be airing.